The moment Thelma stepped through the front door, I felt it. That odd, almost imperceptible shift in energy. She had been gone for 3 days, and I should have been relieved to have her back. Instead, something about her return felt off. It wasn't just the way she smiled, too wide, too bright. It was her entire demeanor. She glided inside like someone who had just been released from some thrilling adventure rather than a work trip in Denver. Her suitcase rolled in behind her, and with a sigh, she dropped her purse onto the entryway table, stretching like she had just stepped off a tropical beach rather than a plane. I leaned against the kitchen counter, watching her, studying her. "Home sweet home," she finally said, flashing me that same practiced grin. "Yeah," I replied slowly. "Welcome back." I should have walked up and hugged her, kissed her, but something held me back, a feeling I couldn't quite define yet. Instead, I stayed put as she shrugged off her coat and flopped onto the couch, kicking off her shoes like she'd just come back from some exhausting ordeal. She stretched her arms behind her head, sighing dramatically. I swear, that trip drained the life out of me. Meetings all day, networking dinners all night. God, I'm so over these work trips. I nodded, though I barely heard her words. My mind was elsewhere, stuck on little details, tiny inconsistencies that didn't add up. For starters, her hair was different. She had left with her straight, dark locks pinned in a neat bun, but now loose waves like she had stopped and styled it before landing, like she wanted to look good for someone. And her scent. Not the usual floral perfume I had gotten her for her birthday, the one she always wore to work events. No, this was different. Muskier, heavier, the kind of scent that didn't belong to her, the kind of scent that clung to skin after spending too much time next to someone else. I forced a smile. "How was your flight?" She waved a dismissive hand. "Uneventful. I just passed out the whole time." She was a terrible liar. Thelma never slept on flights, said the turbulence made her too anxious. I clenched my jaw, inhaling through my nose, trying to steady myself. Maybe I was just overthinking things. Maybe I was exhausted from being alone these past few days. But then my eyes landed on her suitcase. It sat by the door, slightly unzipped, just enough for me to see what was inside. A sliver of red fabric peeked out between her folded clothes. I frowned. That wasn't hers. I knew her wardrobe better than anyone, and Thelma never wore red lingerie. She hated it, said it was too flashy, too obvious. My stomach twisted. I glanced back at her, still lounging on the couch, still stretching like someone who had just had the time of their life. "Thelma?" I said, keeping my voice even. "Did you bring back any souvenirs?" She lifted her head slightly, her brows knitting together. "Huh. You know," I shrugged. "Some little gift, maybe? Something for me?" She blinked at me, and for a fraction of a second, her expression changed. Just barely, but I caught it. That flicker of panic before she quickly masked it with another easy smile. "Oh, she laughed lightly, brushing a hand through her hair. "I totally forgot. I was so busy the whole time, I didn't even get to do any shopping." Liar. I walked over to her suitcase, my heart hammering against my ribs. I could feel her watching me now, sitting up just a little straighter. "What are you doing?" she asked. There was something new in her voice now. Nervousness. I crouched beside her suitcase and reached for the zipper. "Just wanted to help you unpack." She was off the couch in an instant. "I can do it later," she said quickly, grabbing for the handle. But I had already unzipped it the rest of the way. And that's when I saw it. Not just the red lace bra, but an unfamiliar shirt, a crumpled boarding pass with a different return date, and a small bottle of cologne that definitely didn't belong to me. My blood turned cold. I lifted my gaze to her, and for the first time since she walked through that door, her confident smile was gone. Thelma swallowed hard, her hands fidgeting by her sides. "Go on," I said, my voice eerily calm. "Tell me the truth." Her joy, her excitement from moments ago, all of it vanished in an instant. Thelma's mouth opened, but no words came out. Her eyes darted between the suitcase and me, her entire body suddenly tense, like she had been caught in a spotlight with nowhere to run. I stayed crouched, my fingers still gripping the suitcase zipper, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. The evidence was all there, sitting between neatly folded clothes. The red lace bra that wasn't hers, the strange men's shirt, the boarding pass that didn't match the date she had given me, and the cologne bottle that reeked of someone else. She cleared her throat, her voice suddenly higher-pitched than usual. Look, I can explain. Now I stood up slowly, inhaling through my nose, forcing myself to keep my expression neutral. I didn't want to lose control, not yet. Explain what, exactly? My voice came out too calm, too measured. She took a step back. It's not what it looks like. I let out a quiet chuckle, shaking my head. Classic. The oldest excuse in the book. It's not what it looks like. The same phrase cheaters have been using since the dawn of time. I picked up the boarding pass, turning it over in my fingers. You were supposed to come home today. This says you were booked for a flight yesterday. I lifted an eyebrow, tilting my head. Why the extra night, Thelma? She licked her lips, blinking rapidly. There was a delay, so I had to rebook. Work covered it. Really? I nodded slowly. Because I checked your flight status last night. It arrived on time. Her face paled. I watched her brain scramble for another lie, another quick escape route. I held up the men's shirt. It was crumpled, shoved between her things like an afterthought, but the cologne on it was strong, too strong. I didn't recognize the brand, but I recognized what it meant. I shook it slightly in the air. Who does this belong to? She hesitated for just a second too long. It's a coworker's. I borrowed it because I spilled coffee on myself. I forgot to give it back. A dry laugh escaped me, right? And I'm supposed to believe that. She squared her shoulders, suddenly trying to regain control of the situation. Why are you interrogating me like this? She snapped. You're acting crazy. There it was. The deflection. She was pushing back, hoping I would back off, hoping I would let it go. But I wasn't letting this go. I took a slow step forward, lowering my voice. Do you know what the worst part of this is, Thelma? She swallowed, her throat bobbing. I exhaled through my nose, shaking my head. It's not the fact that you're lying to me right now. It's not even the fact that you're insulting my intelligence by throwing out the worst excuses I've ever heard. My fingers tightened around the shirt. It's the fact that you came home smiling like everything was fine. Like you didn't just... My voice caught in my throat. She was silent now, her eyes locked onto mine. For the first time since she had walked through the door, she wasn't trying to fake a smile. And then, in the quiet, something occurred to me. I dropped the shirt back into the suitcase and took another step forward, watching her closely. You weren't planning on coming back, were you? The color drained from her face so quickly I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I tilted my head. That's why you look surprised to be standing here. That's why you're acting surprised that I'm asking these questions. My voice dropped lower. Something happened, didn't it? Something changed your plan. Her lips parted, but she didn't say anything. I let the silence stretch between us, watching her fight an internal war with herself. The truth was clawing at the edges of her expression, but she was still desperately trying to suppress it. I took a deep breath. Tell me the truth, Thelma. Her chest rose and fell quickly, her hands trembling at her sides. And then, in the softest voice, almost a whisper, she said, I made a mistake. I stared at her, my entire body cold. I should have been angry. I should have exploded in rage, but I didn't. Because in that moment, as she stood there, finally cracking, finally breaking down, I realized something. I didn't know this woman anymore. Thelma, the wife I had loved, the woman I had built a life with, was a stranger to me now. Silence hung between us, thick and suffocating. Thelma had just said 4 words that changed everything. I made a mistake. I should have been relieved that she finally admitted something, but I wasn't. A mistake. That was what people said when they forgot to pick up milk from the store. That was what someone said when they accidentally double-booked an appointment. But this wasn't a mistake. This was something she had chosen to do. I took a deep breath, my hands tightening at my sides. A mistake? I repeated, my voice eerily calm. You're going to have to be a little more specific, Thelma. She hesitated, shifting on her feet, her eyes flickering toward the suitcase like it might somehow swallow up the evidence inside, like it could erase the truth she had been so desperately trying to bury. I watched as she struggled, her lips parting then closing again. She was calculating, trying to figure out just how much she could say without losing everything. I exhaled sharply. Thelma, stop. She flinched. I ran a hand through my hair, my pulse hammering. I already know, I continued, my voice dropping lower. I know you weren't on a work trip. I know you weren't just sitting through meetings and networking events. I gestured to the suitcase. I mean, how stupid do you think I am? She swallowed hard, her hands twisting together. I didn't what? I cut her off. Didn't mean for me to find out? Didn't mean to get caught? Didn't mean for this to happen? I let out a humorless laugh. Because you meant for everything else. You meant to book that extra night. You meant to pack that lingerie. You meant to spend your time with whoever he is. Her eyes flashed, and for a split second, I saw something else flicker across her face. Anger. As if I was the problem here. As if I had no right to put the pieces together. And that was the moment I truly saw her. The woman standing in front of me wasn't the woman I thought I married. She was someone else entirely. Someone who had lived a second life right under my nose. Someone who had been capable of looking me in the eyes and lying so smoothly, so effortlessly, that I never saw it coming. I took a step back, shaking my head. How long, Thelma? Her breath hitched. What? How long have you been cheating on me? She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. I could see the war in her mind. Tell the truth, lie, deflect. I let out a slow breath. You might as well be honest with me now, because I swear, if you keep lying, whatever tiny shred of respect I have left for you will be gone. She blinked rapidly, her throat bobbing as she swallowed. Then, barely above a whisper, she said, "This was the first time." I tilted my head, studying her. You want me to believe that? Her jaw clenched. Because it's true. I laughed, but it wasn't real laughter. It was bitter, sharp, a sound that came from somewhere deep in my chest. All right, you just happened to book an extra night at a hotel, just happened to pack brand new lingerie, just happened to what? Fall into some guy's lap by accident. Her face turned red. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Depressed. She bit her lip, her fingers tightening into fists at her sides. And then she made her biggest mistake yet. Her eyes flicked away, just for a second, but it was enough. She had been thinking about him. I felt my stomach drop. I took another step back, as if putting distance between us would somehow make this whole thing less real. Who is he? She froze. What? You heard me. My voice was even now measured. I didn't even feel angry anymore, just empty. Who is he, Thelma? She hesitated. That was all the answer I needed. I nodded slowly, my jaw tightening. So, it's someone I know. Her face twisted, and for a brief second, I saw panic there. Real panic. I let out a breath. Wow! The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just some random guy she met at a hotel bar. This was someone she had been close to, someone who had been around us, someone who had probably smiled in my face while sleeping with my wife behind my back. And Thelma knew I had figured it out. She took a shaky breath. Save it. I cut her off. I stared at her, really looking at her. And for the first time in my life, I didn't recognize the woman in front of me. She wasn't my wife. She wasn't the person I had loved. She was a stranger. And suddenly, everything made sense. I stood there, gripping the edge of the table, my fingers pressing into the wood so hard that my knuckles turned white. Thelma hadn't answered me, but she didn't need to. Her silence was its own kind of confession. I had given her the opportunity to deny it, to fight back, to give me some kind of ridiculous story that I could rip apart. Instead, she stood there, caught in the headlights of her own lies, too paralyzed to figure out her next move. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't the first time she had lied to me. The memories came flooding back like an avalanche, all the little moments I had ignored, All the times I had brushed away a nagging feeling in my gut, convincing myself I was just being paranoid. Like when she started coming home later than usual, always with a perfectly rehearsed excuse. The project deadline got pushed up. We had to stay late. Or when she started dressing differently, not just nicer, but sexier, wearing heels on days she never used to, putting on perfume even when she was just going into the office. Or the times I caught her on her phone, quickly swiping away the screen the second I walked into the room. Ugh, just an annoying work email, she would say, forcing a laugh. They never let me rest. I had believed her because I wanted to, because the alternative meant admitting that my wife, the woman I had built my life with, the woman I had trusted, was lying to my face. And yet, here we were. I looked at her now, really looked at her, and I saw it all so clearly. The panic in her eyes, the way she was holding herself stiff, bracing for impact. I wondered if she was about to break down in tears, beg for my forgiveness, tell me how much she regretted it. But she didn't. Instead, she did something else. She exhaled sharply, squared her shoulders, and rolled her eyes. God, you're being so dramatic, she muttered, shaking her head. I blinked. I actually had to take a second to process that. Dramatic, I repeated slowly, my voice dangerously even. She crossed her arms over her chest, the irritation flashing across her face now. I told you it was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. But you're standing here acting like the world is ending. Like I murdered someone or something. My mouth fell open slightly. Was this really happening? I had caught her. I had literally found another man's shirt in her suitcase. And this was her response? No remorse. No apology. Just irritation that I wasn't letting it slide. I let out a dry laugh, shaking my head. Wow, she scoffed. What? You really don't feel bad, do you? I asked, my voice quieter now. You're not even sorry. She frowned, shifting on her feet like she hadn't expected me to say that. Of course I feel bad, she said, but it was weak, forced. I mean, I didn't want this to happen. I never planned for it. It just happened. I took a slow, deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. No, Thelma, it didn't just happen. You made a choice. You chose to lie to me. You chose to spend a night with someone else. You chose to come home and act like nothing happened. Her lips pressed into a tight line. And worst of all, I continued, stepping closer. You chose to look me in the eyes and treat me like an idiot, like I wouldn't notice, like I wouldn't put it all together. She shook her head, frustration flashing in her eyes. Why are you doing this? Why are you making this harder than it needs to be? I stared at her, my stomach twisting. I'm making it hard? She let out a breath, rubbing her temple. I mean, come on. We've been together for so long. We've had a good run, but people change. Feelings change. And maybe, just maybe, we need to rethink things. There it was. That final crack that shattered everything. I swallowed hard, something inside me going ice cold. Rethink things? She hesitated, biting her lip. I don't know if we're working anymore. The final knife. I nodded slowly, stepping back, suddenly feeling exhausted. Wow, I muttered under my breath. So this wasn't even a mistake to you, was it? She hesitated. You weren't planning on telling me at all, I said, the realization hitting me. You were just going to keep living your double life until what? Until I caught you? Or were you going to leave first? Her jaw clenched, and that was my answer. She had thought about it. She had already considered it. She had been weighing her options, trying to figure out the best way to land on her feet. My chest tightened. The past decade of my life. Had any of it even been real? Had I just been some comfortable fallback for her? Someone she kept around until she found something better? A heavy silence settled between us, thick with everything neither of us was saying. And then, finally, I exhaled. I had my answer. I knew exactly who she was now. I walked away from her, not because I was done, but because I needed space. My hands were shaking, my jaw so tight I could hear my own teeth grinding together. I didn't trust myself to stand there, face to face with Thelma, and not explode. The kitchen felt like a safer place, though nothing about my house felt safe anymore. Everything that was once warm and familiar now felt staged, artificial, like a set built just to keep me believing in a lie. The wedding photos on the wall, the little trinkets we had collected from vacations, the magnets on the fridge with stupid inside jokes, they weren't real anymore. Or maybe they never were. I poured myself a glass of water, my throat dry, my head spinning. Thelma was still in the living room, shifting uncomfortably, probably debating whether to follow me or not. I could hear her breathing, heavy and uneven. Then finally she spoke. "Are you really going to act like this changes everything?" Her voice was softer now, but there was an edge to it, like she was testing the waters. I took a slow sip, set the glass down carefully on the counter, and turned back to face her. "It does change everything." She let out a breath, crossing her arms. "Look, I know I messed up, okay? But we can move past this. We've been through worse." I laughed, but it wasn't the kind of laugh that came from something funny. It was hollow, sharp, the kind of laugh that made my own skin crawl. "Tell me, Thelma, when exactly have we been through worse than this? When have you ever come home and admitted to sleeping with someone else?" She flinched but didn't back down. "I'm saying that we're bigger than this. One bad decision shouldn't erase years of marriage." Years of marriage. That's what she was clinging to. Not love, not regret, not guilt. Time. As if longevity was the only thing that mattered. As if she deserved credit just for staying with me this long. I shook my head, pacing the length of the kitchen. My mind was racing, replaying the last few days, weeks, months. The signs had been there. I had just been too blind, too trusting, too stupid to see them for what they were. I turned to her again, really looking at her. Did I even know this woman? Thelma, the woman I had loved, the woman I had built my life around, wasn't here. She had been replaced by someone else. Someone who could do what she did and still come home and act like nothing had happened. I inhaled sharply, forcing my hands to stop shaking. "Tell me the truth," I said finally. "The whole truth." She hesitated. "I already told you. It was just..." "No." I cut her off, stepping forward. "The whole truth, Thelma. No more excuses, no more downplaying. If there's even a single chance that you want to fix this, you're going to tell me everything." Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. Her arms, once crossed so defensively, dropped to her sides. She looked down at the floor, and for a moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, she was about to come clean. But then she did something that made my blood turn to ice. She smiled. Not a big, joyful smile. Not a sarcastic smirk. A tiny, almost involuntary twitch of her lips, like something about this moment, this fight, this mess, amused her. My stomach twisted. "Why are you smiling?" She blinked, the expression gone in a flash, like she hadn't realized she had done it. I'm not. But she was. And in that second, I knew. She wasn't sorry. She had been caught, yes, but sorry? No. If she had never been caught, she would have kept going. She would have walked through this door every night, kissed me, called me honey, told me she loved me, all while sneaking around behind my back. It was a game to her. I took a slow step back, gripping the counter, trying to steady myself. "You were never going to tell me, were you?" She opened her mouth, but she had no answer. I nodded to myself. That's what I thought. The weight of it hit me all at once. My wife had been unfaithful, and worse than that, she didn't even regret it. I had spent years believing that Thelma was my person, my partner, my best friend. I had loved her with everything I had. And yet, here she was, standing in my kitchen, treating the destruction of our marriage like a minor inconvenience. Something inside me broke. Not in a way that made me want to yell or throw things or storm out. No, it was quieter than that. A slow, devastating realization that there was nothing left to fight for. Thelma tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable. "So, what now?" I met her gaze, feeling eerily calm. "That's the question, isn't it?" And for the first time since she walked through that door, I saw fear flash across her face. Because she realized something at the same time I did. This wasn't just my problem. She was about to lose everything, too. I stood there, my breathing steady, my mind sharper than it had been in hours. Thelma's face had changed. No longer defensive, no longer irritated. Now there was something else creeping in, uncertainty. She had expected me to shout. She had expected anger, accusations, maybe even a dramatic argument. But I wasn't giving her that. Instead, I was just watching her. That silence. It was worse than anything she had prepared for. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "So, tell me," I said, my voice level, almost casual. "When did you decide that this marriage didn't matter anymore?" She flinched at that, her fingers tightening into fists at her sides. "That's not fair," she muttered. I let out a short laugh, shaking my head. "Fair? You're talking about fair." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "I told you this wasn't planned. It just happened." There it is again. I tilted my head. That phrase, "it just happened." Like you weren't involved in making those choices. Like you had no control over anything. She swallowed hard, shifting on her feet. I studied her for a moment, really taking her in. This was the person I had trusted with everything. And yet, standing here now, she felt like a stranger. A long, heavy silence stretched between us before she finally spoke again. "Alden, I never meant to hurt you." I exhaled slowly, rubbing my jaw. "Then why did you?" She had no answer. And that's when I knew. She wasn't sorry. She regretted getting caught. She regretted that she was standing here now, having to face the truth. But the choices, the decisions she had made, she didn't regret those. I turned toward the stairs, my body feeling heavy, my mind exhausted. "Alden," she called after me, her voice thin, fragile. I paused, gripping the railing. "You don't get to ask me for anything anymore." Her breath hitched. I turned my head slightly, just enough for her to hear the finality in my voice. "We're done." And then, without another word, I climbed the stairs. I didn't look back, because there was nothing left to see. I didn't sleep that night. Lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, I kept replaying everything in my mind. The conversations, the excuses, the realization that the person I had trusted more than anyone had been hiding things from me. The house felt different now, empty, unfamiliar. I could hear Thelma downstairs, pacing, shifting, restless. She was waiting for me to come down, to start a conversation, to say something that would make this feel like a normal argument. But this wasn't a normal argument. This wasn't something that could be fixed with a few apologies and empty reassurances. By the time the sun started rising, I already knew what I had to do. I got up, pulled on a sweatshirt, and grabbed my phone from the nightstand. My hands were steady as I scrolled through my contacts, searching for the name I never thought I'd need, my lawyer. I stared at the number for a moment, just a moment. Then I pressed call. Downstairs, Thelma sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, looking lost. The confident, carefree woman who had walked through the door yesterday was gone. Now, she looked like someone who had just realized she had gambled everything and lost. She sat up when she saw me, her voice hoarse. "Alden, can we talk?" I didn't sit. I didn't lean against the counter like I always did. I didn't give her the comfort of pretending things were okay. "There's nothing left to talk about," I said simply. Her face twisted. "We can fix this." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Fix what, Thelma?" I gestured around us. "Tell me, what exactly do you think we can salvage here?" She swallowed hard. I don't know. But we've been together for so long." I raised an eyebrow. "And that's supposed to mean what exactly?" "That time somehow cancels out choices." She didn't answer. I sighed, reaching into my pocket and pulling out a single, folded document. I set it on the table. Her eyes darted to it, and she paled when she saw what it was. I already called the lawyer," I said, my voice steady. "The divorce papers will be ready soon. I gestured to the paper. "This is just my request for you to start packing your things." Her breathing hitched. "Alden, wait." "No." My voice was firm, final. Her lips trembled. "You don't have to do this." I met her gaze, and for the first time, I saw her exactly as she was. Not the person I had once loved, not my wife, just the person who had made her choice. And now she had to live with it. I turned toward the front door, unlocking it, pulling it open wide. The cold morning air rushed in, filling the space between us. "You should go now," I said quietly. She hesitated, her eyes searching mine for something, anything that could save her. But she didn't find it because it wasn't there anymore. And as she finally stood, finally walked toward the door with slow, uncertain steps, I felt something inside me loosen, something that had been holding me down, suffocating me, keeping me chained to a past that no longer existed. And by the time she was gone, I could finally breathe again. The moment Thelma stepped out that door, it felt like something heavy had been lifted off my chest. I didn't expect that. I thought I'd feel broken, angry, or maybe even regretful. But instead, as the door clicked shut behind her, I felt something else entirely: relief. I stood there for a long moment, just breathing. The air in the house felt different, lighter, quieter, peaceful in a way I hadn't noticed in years. Maybe I had been holding on to something that wasn't real for longer than I realized. I turned, looking around the house. It wasn't just a home we had built together. It was my home now, and I wasn't going to let her choices define what came next for me. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel trapped. The weeks that followed weren't easy, but they were mine. I focused on things I had neglected, hobbies I had set aside, friendships I had let fade, even little things like cooking meals for myself instead of just ordering takeout. I reconnected with old friends, people who had been there before Thelma, before the chaos, before I had lost sight of who I was. And the more time I spent away from the wreckage of my marriage, the more I realized just how much of myself I had given away to someone who never truly valued it. One afternoon, I found myself at a coffee shop, sipping on something too strong, watching people pass by outside. That's when I heard a voice beside me. "Mind if I sit here?" I looked up. A woman stood there, holding a cup in one hand, gesturing toward the empty seat across from me. She had a warm smile, the kind that didn't feel forced or rehearsed. I nodded. "Go ahead." She sat, stirring her drink absent-mindedly. "You look like someone deep in thought." I chuckled, leaning back. "Yeah, you could say that." She smiled again, tilting her head. "Well, if it helps, new beginnings usually start when you least expect them." I thought about that for a second. New beginnings. Maybe she was right. I wasn't the same man who had stood in that kitchen watching his marriage fall apart. I wasn't the same man who had held on to something broken, hoping it could be fixed. I was someone moving forward. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking back.